think Kanban is becoming popular in the creative industries because there's very little other help out there for the creative type work where you're for example building computer games, or you're building um marketing content, or you're building videos, whatever it is that you're building that's not really software engineering, because everybody thinks of Scrum as a software engineering process and find it a little bit weird trying to apply it within their context, right? They're actually running into the same thing that everybody runs into, and that would things don't work that way here. So Kanban is a much better starting point for getting into making changes to the way that you work and trying to optimize your processes. So coming up with that definition of workflow for your existing process is usually much easier than trying to apply something like Scrum. So for lots of organizations, they don't want that big bang change, right? When you apply something like Scrum, you're making a leap from the way you currently work and changing it to something else, and this is going to be your starting point. So that would be, you start at Scrum and then you're going to move forward from there and optimize. You're still going to use Kanban, right? Kanban strategy, and you're going to optimize from there. But if your way of working right now is kind of working and you don't want to disrupt that too much, or you don't know if you're going to get value from that Scrum thing, then start from where you are, right? That's the beauty of a Kanban strategy, is it doesn't care it doesn't care the way your system currently works. You model your existing system. That's where you start from. So you can take any industry, any system, creative or otherwise, and you can just model your existing system. A huge difficulty, though, I've worked in quite a few creative. I've worked in the creative industry, right? When I first started as a software engineer after I graduated back in 2000, my first jobs were new media agencies. You probably wouldn't call them that anymore, but new media agencies. I worked with groups of designers building Flash applications, Flash websites, if anybody remembers Flash. If not, don't even look at it. It's mental. Um, and those kind of thing, working with the creative industry, and it is a very difficult space because of the way art works, right? It's very difficult to be iterative and incremental right away in that space, because the way we traditionally work with art is it's your personal thing, and your personal thing is going to a certain point till you're personally happy with it, and then you're providing it to other people to give you feedback and that kind of thing. So there's a much more personal nature to that than there is in maybe other industries like software engineering, right? Where there's a little bit less personal. It can still be personal, but a little bit less personal. So that's why creative industries and creative folks struggle with something like Scrum, because it talks about team. It doesn't talk about individual, and creativity is about the individual. So finding the balance in that, and it's very standoffish. So Kanban strategy, but the hardest part of a Kanban strategy, at least at the beginning, is writing down your workflow, right? Documenting your definition of workflow. How are you going to get 5 creative people in a room and agree what your existing workflow is? So that's going to be your first struggle. But Kanban is popular in creative industries because it seems like, actually, actually going to recant some of that a little bit. I think that Kanban is popular in a lot of places where people don't want to change, and they see Scrum has a bunch of rules and Kanban doesn't have a bunch of rules, and they feel like they can just put a board on the wall, call it Kanban, and they're done. That's not Kanban. Having a board on the wall and moving cards across it is one very small part of Kanban. Maybe an important part, that visualization part, but have you taken the time to actually define your workflow? To agree as a group, all the people working together, that this is how we are all going to act, how we're all going to make decisions in the same way. I doubt that happens in most organizations. Have you agreed what the work in process limits are? How much work is going to sit in each column? If you don't have WIP limits, you ain't got Kanban at all, right? So sitting down and agreeing that this is really hard stuff. It's hard for a group of people to get together and make these decisions and come up with these rationales. It's just hard. I do workshops with groups of people talking about this stuff, and you can do a 4 hour workshop with a group of 5 or 6 people and not get anywhere near a definition of workflow. Nowhere near. And this is people who largely agree on what it is they're doing, because the devil's in the details, right? When you've got a bunch of work in a pile and you need to start a new piece of work, how do you choose that piece of work? How do you choose it? Right? We have to agree as a group how we're going to choose it, because this is our system that we're all working within. So whose way of choosing it do we pick? Right? Out of the 5 different opinions on how they select work. Well, I like this type of work, so I'm going to take that. No, that's not good enough. That's not how you optimize a system, right? That's not how you optimize the flow of work through a system. What is the most valuable piece of work to take next? Now, that's an interesting conversation. And how do you define value? And does it matter whether you as an individual are comfortable with that piece of work or not? Right? There's probably some yes, some no, right, within the bounds of that. So making these agreements and writing them down is very hard. And although Kanban has become popular, particularly in the creative industry, I definitely feel there's a lot of can't ban, right? They really don't want to do anything or change anything or have anything imposed upon them and their way of working. I know a lot of creatives. Creatives are very much my way of working is the best for me. That's my muse, right? And that's absolutely reasonable. But we're all working together within a business, driving a particular outcome, and that business needs to optimize the work in order to maximize the return on investment, right? So how much effort we spend versus how much money we get. And yeah, we need some level of standardization. And a core critical part of Kanban is defining that standardization. Have personal Kanban. If you don't want to work together as a team, each individual has their own Kanban. Problem solved, right? Everybody just decides their own way of working, their own workflow. As long as they define it, they write it down, they have the visualization, limit their work in process. Personal Kanban. There's a book called Personal Kanban on personal Kanban, and I highly recommend that as well. So I know Kanban's getting popular, but please do look at the Kanban guides, right? Take a look at the Kanban guides. Look at what is actually involved in creating a Kanban or using a Kanban strategy against your work. And usually there's more rigor, more effort, more ambiguity, and more difficulty than something like Scrum. If your current system of work is failing you, then you would benefit from creating and applying a Kanban strategy. Our professional Kanban trainers and consultants are ready to help. Don't wait. The sooner you get started, the sooner you will improve. Get in touch below.